A gunshot
Oh
echoed across
my
Red Dust Canyon
God.
like thunder from a broken sky. It was late afternoon, just before sunset, when the sun hung low and red like a dying fire. The temperature was dropping fast. Dark clouds were rolling in from the mountains, and the wind was picking up speed, blowing dust and dirt across the empty streets of Copper Creek, a small town that nobody really remembered anymore. In the middle of the dusty main street stood a beautiful black horse. His name was Storm. He was breathing hard, his chest moving up and down like a broken bellows. His eyes were wide with fear. Behind him stood Jake Hollister, the richest man in the county. He held a smoking pistol in his right hand. His face was twisted with anger and meanness. He wore a dark suit and a black hat, but his eyes were colder than any winter night. The horse had a bullet wound in his leg. Blood dripped down onto the dirt. Storm was the property of old Sheriff Tom Bradley, who had retired 2 years ago and just wanted peace. But Jake Hollister wanted revenge. The sheriff had stopped Hollister from stealing water from the town well 5 years ago, and Hollister never forgot. He never forgave. Now he was taking everything from the sheriff, his land, his dignity, and finally, his beloved horse. Nobody moved. The townspeople watched from behind closed doors and windows. They were scared. Hollister had money and power, and the new sheriff was weak and corrupt. He worked for Hollister now. Everyone knew it, but nobody dared to speak the truth. Old Sheriff Tom was inside his small house, watching from the window. He was 76 years old now, with white hair like snow and a face marked by time and hard living. When he saw the gun smoke, when he heard the shot, when he understood what had happened, his heart broke into pieces. Storm was not just a horse to him. Storm was his last friend in a world that had forgotten about kindness. The wind got stronger. The dust swirled around the main street like ghosts dancing. The clouds grew darker. The light was fading fast from the sky. It felt like the world itself was angry at what was happening. The temperature was dropping. Dust and small stones flew through the air like bullets. Storm tried to run, but his injured leg would not carry him well. He limped down the street, leaving a trail of blood in the dust. Hollister laughed a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. He raised his gun again, ready to finish what he had started. He did not care who was watching. He did not care about justice or right or wrong. He only cared about hurting the sheriff by killing the thing the sheriff loved most. Just as Hollister was about to fire the second shot, something incredible happened. The church bell began to ring. It rang once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. The sound was loud and powerful and old. The bell had not been rung in months. Nobody knew who was ringing it, but it cut through the silence of the town like a sword cutting through darkness. Then another sound came, then another. The old church bell kept ringing and ringing, louder and louder. The sound filled the whole town. People came out of their houses. They came out of the saloon. They came from the general store and the hotel. They came from everywhere, confused and afraid, but coming anyway. And then they saw her. A young girl, maybe 14 years old, came running down the street. Her name was Lucy. She was the granddaughter of one of the farmers. She had always been kind to animals. She had always been different from other children. She was brave in a way that adults had forgotten how to be. Lucy ran straight to Storm. She put her small hands on the horse's neck and looked directly at Jake Hollister. Her eyes were not afraid. Her voice was clear and steady. "No more," she said, just 2 words. But the way she said them with such power and courage made Hollister stop. He was shocked. He was not used to people standing against him, especially not a child. More people came, old men, young women, parents with their children. They formed a circle around Storm and Lucy. They did not have weapons. They did not have power or money. But they had something that Hollister did not have. They had unity. They had courage. They had love for each other and for the innocent. Hollister realized he was surrounded. He saw the faces of people he thought he controlled. He saw in their eyes that something had changed. Something had awakened in this small, forgotten town. A young girl's simple act of bravery had reminded them that they were still humans with hearts and choices. In that moment, something broke inside Hollister. His power was not real power at all. It was only fear. And fear cannot stand against love and unity. He dropped his gun. It fell into the dust. He stood there, alone, surrounded by ordinary people who had found extraordinary strength. Sheriff Tom came out of his house slowly. His old legs moved carefully, but his eyes were bright and alive. He walked to Storm and embraced the horse. He looked at the townspeople, at Lucy most of all, and he cried. Real tears ran down his weathered face. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for remembering who you are." The wind began to stop. The clouds started to part. A single ray of golden sunlight broke through and touched the main street. The dust settled down like tired dancers finally resting after a long night. Hollister was arrested by the townspeople. Not with violence, but with the simple power of unity. The corrupt sheriff realized that his position meant nothing if the people did not support him. He stepped down ashamed. Storm lived for 5 more years after that day. His leg healed. He walked with a small limp, but he was alive and loved and cared for. Every child in town knew him. Every person who walked past him remembered the day when a young girl's courage saved a town from darkness. And old Sheriff Tom never forgot. He learned that sometimes the smallest act of kindness and courage can change everything. That day, he understood that true strength is not in guns or money. True strength is in standing together when it matters most. The sun set that evening over Red Dust Canyon in shades of orange, gold, and purple. And for the first time in many years, Copper Creek felt like home again.
3 weeks had passed since the day the town of Copper Creek stood together and stopped Jake Hollister. The townspeople believed their troubles were over. They thought life would return to normal. They thought they had one, but they were wrong. Danger was coming back, and it would be much worse than before. The jail in Copper Creek was small and old. It had only 4 cells. Jake Hollister was locked in the strongest cell, the one in the back corner. During the day, he was quiet. He sat on his wooden bed and did not speak to anyone. But at night, when the darkness came, people heard him laughing. Not the cruel, loud laugh from before. This was a different kind of laugh. It was cold and patient and evil. It was the laugh of a man making plans. One night, a messenger arrived in town. He came on a fast horse, covered in dust and dirt from traveling many days. The messenger went directly to the jail and asked to speak with Jake Hollister. The new sheriff, a good man named David Cole, was confused, but he allowed the meeting. What he heard in that conversation would change everything. The messenger brought a message from Hollister's brother, Victor Hollister. Victor was worse than Jake. Much worse. Victor was an outlaw leader who controlled a gang of 30 dangerous men. The gang lived in the mountains, far from any town or law. They robbed trains, stole cattle, and hurt people without any feeling or remorse. Victor had sent word. He was coming to free his brother, and when he arrived, he would destroy Copper Creek completely. The message said this: burn the town, take the water rights, kill the old sheriff, make them suffer. Make them understand that nobody stops a Hollister and lives to tell about it. Sheriff Cole knew he had to tell the townspeople immediately. He gathered everyone in the church, even in the middle of the night. When the people heard about Victor Hollister and his gang, fear spread through them like a sickness. They had been brave when it was just Jake and his gun. But 30 trained outlaws? That was different. That was something most of them had never faced before. Old Sheriff Tom stood up. His voice was weak with age, but his words were strong. "We can run," he said. "We can leave this town and go somewhere else. Or we can stand together like we did before. We can fight for our home." But many people shook their heads. They were scared. They had families. They had children. They did not want to die for a town. Some families started packing their belongings. They made plans to leave within days. Lucy, the brave girl who had saved Storm, stood up and spoke. "Running away is easy," she said. "But where will we go? They will find us. And if we run, we show them that fear is stronger than we are. I do not want to live that way." Her words made people pause. But fear is a powerful thing. It makes people do things they would not normally do. Sheriff Cole had only 5 deputies. They were good men, but they were not trained soldiers. They did not have enough weapons or ammunition. They did not have the experience to fight against a professional gang of outlaws. The situation seemed hopeless. Then something unexpected happened. A stranger rode into town. He was a tall man, maybe 50 years old, with a scarred face and old, tired eyes. He wore a long coat and carried 2 pistols on his belt. He looked dangerous, but he also looked tired of being dangerous. The stranger walked into the sheriff's office and spoke directly to Sheriff Cole. "My name is Marshal Henry Kane," he said. "I've been hunting Victor Hollister for 5 years. I know him. I know his men. I know how they think and how they fight. I have come to stop him, and I have come to help your town." Sheriff Cole did not know if he should trust this stranger. But Marshal Kane showed him official papers. He showed him letters from the government. Everything was real. Marshal Kane was exactly who he said he was. "Victor will arrive in 4 days," Marshal Kane said. "Maybe 5. He will come from the north, through Red Rock Pass. That is the only way to reach the town without traveling for many extra days. If we prepare, if we are smart, we can stop them there. We do not have to fight them in the town. We do not have to risk your homes or your families." Hope returned to the townspeople. Marshal Kane began teaching the men how to fight. He taught them how to hold guns properly. He taught them about strategy and tactics. He taught them how to stay calm when danger was coming. Sheriff Cole worked beside the marshal, learning and helping others learn. Lucy came to Marshal Kane and asked if she could help. The marshal looked at her carefully. "You are brave," he said, "but you are young. I will not put you in danger." "I'm the same age as some of your soldiers," Lucy said, "and I have already proven I'm not afraid. Let me help." Marshal Kane finally agreed to let her help prepare the town. She carried messages between different groups. She helped organize supplies. She made sure everyone knew the plan. She became the connection between all the different parts of their defense. For days passed like slow torture. The tension in the town grew thicker and heavier each day. Families that had planned to leave decided to stay. They had decided to fight. The decision was not easy, but it was right. On the morning of the 5th day, a scout came running into town. His voice was breathless and urgent. "They are coming," he shouted. "The gang is riding through Red Rock Pass now. They will be here in 2 hours." Sheriff Cole looked at his people. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw something else. He saw determination. He saw courage. He saw people who had decided that their home was worth fighting for. "Then we ride to meet them," he said simply. "We meet them at Red Rock Pass. We show them that Copper Creek is not easy prey." Marshal Kane nodded his approval. The townspeople gathered their weapons. They prepared their horses. And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, turning the desert golden and hot, they rode toward the mountains, toward danger, toward the future that would decide if their small town would survive or disappear forever. Behind them, locked in his cell, Jake Hollister smiled. He was about to see if his town or Victor's gang would survive. He did not care which one won. He only cared that blood would be spilled. The desert wind carried the sound of hoofbeats toward Red Rock Pass, toward destiny, toward a battle that would be remembered for generations. Red Rock Pass was a narrow canyon that cut through the mountains like a scar. The rocks on both sides were tall and red and ancient. They looked like they had been standing there for 1,000 years, watching everything that happened below them. The canyon was only wide enough for 3 horses to ride side by side. It was perfect for a trap. It was perfect for a battle. Marshal Kane had chosen this place carefully. He had ridden ahead with 5 experienced fighters. They had spent the night setting up their positions on the high rocks. They hid behind the stones and in the narrow spaces between boulders. They waited. Patience was part of the plan. Sheriff Cole led the rest of the townspeople, about 30 men and 3 women who insisted on fighting. They rode slowly up the canyon in the early morning light. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the rocks orange and gold. The air was cool and thin at this altitude. It was hard to breathe. Their horses moved carefully over the rough ground. Lucy rode beside Sheriff Tom, who sat tall on Storm despite his old age. The horse seemed to understand the importance of this moment. Storm was strong and brave, just like his master. Lucy carried a rifle that was almost as long as she was tall. She had practiced shooting for 3 days. She was not an expert, but she was learning quickly. "Stay close to me," Sheriff Tom told her. "When the shooting starts, get behind the rocks. Your job is to stay alive, not to be a hero." Lucy nodded, but she was thinking about something else. She was thinking about her home. She was thinking about the families who had decided to stay. She was thinking about the children who were waiting in the church, protected by the strongest walls in town. She was thinking about why this fight was necessary. The canyon got narrower as they rode deeper. The walls of rock seemed to close in around them. Everything was quiet, too quiet. The only sounds are the hoofbeats of the horses and the breathing of the nervous riders. Nobody was talking. Everyone was waiting, watching, feeling the danger growing closer. Then they heard it. Voices. Lots of voices. And the sound of many horses coming fast. Victor Hollister's gang appeared at the far end of the canyon. They came riding hard, dust flying behind them like storm. There were more than 30, maybe 40 men. They were rough and scarred and looked like they had spent their whole lives doing violent things. Many of them had guns. Some had rifles. Some had pistols. They looked like an army of darkness riding toward them. At the front rode Victor Hollister himself. He was bigger than his brother Jake. He was wider and stronger. He had a long scar running down his left cheek. He wore a black hat and a long dark coat. His eyes were empty, the eyes of a man who had done so many bad things that he no longer had a conscience. He no longer understood right and wrong. He only understood power and control. When Victor saw the townspeople blocking the canyon, he started laughing. It was a cruel laugh that echoed off the rocks. "Look at this," he shouted to his men. "They actually think they can stop us. These are farmers and shopkeepers and children. This will be easy." His men laughed with him. They started riding faster, moving towards Sheriff Cole's group. They were not worried. They were confident. They had won every fight they had ever been in. That was when Marshal Kane gave the signal. 3 gunshots rang out from the high rocks. The shots were perfectly timed. 3 of Hollister's men fell from their horses immediately. They had been hit by expert shooters positioned on the cliffs above. The outlaws suddenly realized they were trapped. They were in a narrow canyon with enemies above them and enemies in front of them. "Fire!" Marshal Kane shouted from his position above. More shots came from the rocks. The townspeople, trained by Marshal Kane to stay calm, fired their weapons carefully. They did not waste ammunition. Each shot was aimed and purposeful. The outlaw gang was confused and frightened. They had expected easy victory, not a coordinated attack. Victor Hollister recovered quickly. He was a dangerous man, and he was experienced in fighting. He shouted orders to his men. "Up the rocks. Get to higher ground. We will surround them." Some of his men tried to climb the canyon walls, but Marshal Kane and his fighters were ready. They fired at anyone who tried to reach their positions. The canyon became a place of noise and smoke and chaos. Sheriff Cole led his townspeople in a different kind of fighting. They moved carefully from rock to rock. They worked together. They supported each other. A young farmer named Thomas covered for Lucy when she had to reload her rifle. A shopkeeper named Marcus helped an older woman climb to safety behind a large boulder. They were not professional soldiers, but they were fighting for their homes, and that made them strong. Lucy stayed low and kept shooting. Her hands were shaking, but her aim was improving. She was terrified, but she did not run. She thought about the children in the church. She thought about Old Storm and Sheriff Tom. She thought about why this fight mattered. The battle lasted maybe 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Gradually, Victor Hollister realized his mistake. His gang was being defeated. Men were falling. Men were giving up. The townspeople were not running away. They were not breaking. They were standing strong. "Retreat!" Victor finally shouted. "Fall back. We are leaving." But he did not leave without a final act of evil. As his men turned their horses around, Victor aimed his pistol directly at Sheriff Tom. Lucy saw it happen. Without thinking, without planning, she threw herself in front of the old sheriff. The bullet meant for him hit her shoulder instead. She fell backward with a cry of pain. Sheriff Tom caught her as she fell. "No," he screamed. "No, Lucy." But Lucy was still alive. The bullet had hit her shoulder, not her heart. She looked up at the old sheriff with brave eyes. "I am okay," she whispered. "Stop him." Marshal Kane saw what happened. He took careful aim at Victor Hollister and fired once. The bullet hit Victor's right arm, and his gun fell to the ground. He could not shoot anymore. He gathered his remaining men, maybe half of what he had started with, and they fled down the canyon, riding away as fast as they could. The battle was over. The townspeople had won. But as Lucy lay bleeding on the ground, Sheriff Tom understood that victory always costs something. Freedom is never free. Courage always requires sacrifice. And sometimes the bravest people are the ones willing to bleed for what they love. The doctor's house was small and clean, with white walls and a window that faced the mountains. Lucy lay on a soft bed, with white bandages wrapped around her shoulder. The bullet had gone through the muscle, but missed the bone. She would live. She would heal. But it would take time, many weeks of time. Sheriff Tom sat beside her bed every single day. He brought her water and food. He read to her from old books. He told her stories about his life as a lawman. He held her hand when the pain was bad. Sometimes he cried quietly when he thought Lucy was sleeping, grateful that she had survived, sorry that she had been hurt because of him. "You should not blame yourself," Lucy told him one afternoon, when the sunlight was coming through the window in golden streams. "I made my choice. I wanted to save you. I still want to save you. From sadness, from guilt, from the darkness that lives inside you because of all the hard things you have done." Sheriff Tom looked at this young girl who had shown more courage than most adults ever would. He realized that she was wise beyond her years. She understood things about the human heart that took most people a lifetime to learn. "How did you become so smart?" he asked her gently. "I was not smart," Lucy said. "I was just brave enough to see what needed to be done." Bravery and smartness are sometimes the same thing. While Lucy was healing, the town was changing in important ways. The outlaws who had survived the battle were captured and locked in a temporary jail built in the church basement. There were 12 of them. They were dangerous men, but they were also men who were tired of fighting. Many of them had families. Some had been forced to join Victor's gang because they owed money or because they were running from bad things they had done in their past. Marshal Kane spent time talking to each prisoner. He listened to their stories. He understood that not all evil people were born evil. Some became evil because of circumstances and choices and desperation. Some of them could be saved. Some of them could become different people if given a chance. A man named Robert was one of the prisoners. He was 45 years old and had been with Victor's gang for 10 years. He told Marshal Kane that he had a daughter in Texas. He had not seen her in a decade. He had sent money to her mother when he could, but he had never gone to see his child. He had been too ashamed of who he had become. "I would give anything to see her again," Robert said with tears in his eyes. "To tell her that I love her. To tell her that I am sorry for being gone her whole life." Marshal Kane made a decision. When the trial happened, he spoke for Robert. He told the judge that Robert had a chance at redemption. He told the judge that some people deserve a second chance. The judge listened and gave Robert a reduced sentence. Instead of hanging or life in prison, Robert was given 10 years. He could still see his daughter. He could still become a different man. Not all the prisoners received second chances. Some of them had done too many bad things. Some of them showed no remorse, no sorrow for their crimes. They were sentenced to hang or to life in prison. Justice had to be served. But justice did not have to be only about punishment. Justice could also be about redemption. Jake Hollister was the most difficult case. He had started the whole situation. He had shot Storm. He had tried to destroy the town out of revenge for something that had happened 5 years ago. But as the trial progressed, something strange happened. Jake began to change. He watched the town work together during his trial. He saw families helping each other. He saw the doctor treating the wounded outlaws the same way he treated the townspeople. He saw Lucy walking through the town with her bandaged shoulder, still smiling at people, still kind despite being hurt. He saw old Sheriff Tom and Marshal Kane sitting together in the courthouse, two men on different sides of the law, but unified in their belief that justice should be fair. Something in Jake's heart began to shift. On the third day of the trial, he asked to speak. "I am sorry," he said to the court. He looked directly at Sheriff Tom. "I'm sorry for all the pain I caused. I am sorry for shooting your horse. I was so filled with anger that I could not see anything else. I was so focused on revenge that I forgot what it meant to be human." Sheriff Tom listened. He did not smile, but he nodded slowly. "I deserve punishment," Jake continued. "I accept whatever the judge decides. But I also want to work. While I am in prison, I want to work every day. I want to send money to the town. I want to help pay for Lucy's healing. I want to spend the rest of my life trying to be better than I was." The judge gave Jake 20 years in prison. It was a long sentence, but it was not a death sentence. Jake would have a chance to redeem himself, though it would take decades of work and change. After the trial ended, the town of Copper Creek began to rebuild. But they were rebuilding more than just buildings. They were rebuilding their belief in themselves. They were rebuilding their trust in each other. They were rebuilding their hope for the future. Marshall Kane decided to stay in the town for a while longer. He set up a training center where he taught people about safety and security and how to protect themselves. He worked alongside Sheriff Cole, helping to make the town stronger without making it mean or cold. He taught people that strength could be gentle. Power could be kind. 1 month after the battle, Lucy was strong enough to walk again. Her shoulders still hurt, but the doctor said it would continue to heal. She walked through the town with Sheriff Tom and Storm, greeting people, listening to their stories, helping where she could. The town had learned something important. They had learned that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. A young girl's courage had saved them. A community's unity had protected them. A willingness to forgive and believe in second chances had made them stronger. And in the mountains beyond Red Rock Pass, Victor Hollister was never heard from again. Some said he died in the desert. Some said he fled to Mexico. The townspeople did not spend much time worrying about him. They were too busy building something beautiful. Copper Creek was no longer a forgotten town. It was a town where people stood together. It was a town where the weak were protected and the strong chose to be gentle. It was a town where an old sheriff and a young girl had taught an entire community the meaning of courage. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set golden over the mountains, you could see Sheriff Tom sitting on Storm, with Lucy beside him on her own horse, watching over the town they had all fought to save. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Red Rock Pass. 1 year since Lucy had thrown herself in front of Sheriff Tom's bullet. 1 year since the town of Copper Creek had decided to stand together instead of running away in fear. 1 year since everything had changed. The town was preparing for a celebration. It was not a celebration of victory or war. It was a celebration of life. It was a celebration of community. It was a celebration of people learning to be better versions of themselves. The main street had been decorated with colorful ribbons and flowers. Tables were set up with food prepared by the women and men of the town. There was fried chicken and fresh bread and apple pie and lemonade. Children were running around, playing games, laughing without fear. Music was being played by old musicians who had not played in years. Their fingers were stiff, but their hearts were full. Lucy walked through the town wearing a light blue dress. Her shoulder was completely healed now. There was a small scar where the bullet had entered, but it did not hurt anymore. She was stronger than before, not just physically, but inside her soul. She had learned what it meant to face fear and not let fear win. Sheriff Tom walked beside her, leading Storm by the reins. The black horse was healthy and strong. His coat shone in the afternoon sunlight. He walked calmly through the crowd, used to the attention now. Children came to touch his soft nose and feed him carrots. Storm enjoyed the affection. He had learned that not all human contact brought pain. "I cannot believe it has been a year," Lucy said, looking at all the happy faces around her. "It feels like just yesterday we were running toward Red Rock Pass, not knowing if we would come back alive." "Time moves differently when you are living," Sheriff Tom replied. "When you're just existing, time crawls. When you are really living, it flies. We have been living this year. That is why it feels short." Marshall Kane stood near the edge of the celebration, watching everything. He was a man who belonged to no particular place, always moving, always helping towns that needed him. But he had decided to stay in Copper Creek for a few more months. He had fallen in love with the people here. He had seen something in them that reminded him why he had become a marshal in the first place, to protect the innocent and give people second chances. "You should stay longer," Sheriff Cole told him, bringing 2 cups of coffee. "The town needs you. I need you. We have much more to do here." Marshal Kane looked at the sheriff. They had become friends during this year. They had worked together to rebuild the law enforcement in Copper Creek. They had made it a place where justice was fair and compassion was strong. "I will stay through the winter," Marshal Kane said. "But after that, I must move on. There are other towns that need help, other people who need saving. But I will come back sometimes. This town will always have a place in my heart." In the jail cell at the edge of town, Jake Hollister was also thinking about the celebration. He was not allowed to join, but he could hear the music and laughter. It made him sad, but it also made him hopeful. He spent his days working, just as he had promised. He worked in the prison workshop, making furniture and tools. He sent half of his earnings to help rebuild the town. The other half he sent to an orphanage in the next county, hoping that his money could help children who had no one to care for them. A guard named Matthew came to Jake's cell to give him water and food. "How long have you been here now?" the guard asked. 437 days, Jake said immediately. He had been counting every single day. "I have 18,130 days left before I am released. If I live that long." "That is a long time to think about what you have done," Matthew said. "Yes," Jake replied. "But every day I think about it, I understand a little bit more about how much pain I caused. I understand how selfish I was. I understand that the anger I felt was not worth destroying people's lives. I wish I could go back and be different from the beginning. But I cannot. All I can do is be different now." Matthew nodded. He had worked in the jail for many years, and he had seen many prisoners. Most of them never changed. But Jake was different. He was truly sorry. He was truly trying to become a better man. At the celebration, Dr. Wilson was receiving special recognition. He had worked tirelessly to heal the wounded during the battle. He had treated both townspeople and outlaws with the same care and dedication. He had shown that healing and compassion were more powerful than judgment and anger. "You have been the heart of this community," Sheriff Cole told him, presenting him with a gift, a new medical bag with fine leather and special tools. "You have reminded us that every person deserves care, no matter what they have done." The doctor's eyes filled with tears. "I'm just doing what I've always done," he said humbly. "But this year has taught me that doing what is right is never wasted. Every time we choose kindness, we change the world a little bit." As the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and purple, all the townspeople gathered in the town square. Sheriff Cole stood on a small platform and spoke to everyone. "1 year ago, we were afraid," he said. "We were ready to run. We were ready to give up on our home. But a young girl showed us that courage is stronger than fear. An old sheriff reminded us that love for your community is worth fighting for. A marshal taught us that justice can be fair. And all of you, every single person, taught me that together we can face anything." He looked at Lucy, who was standing beside Sheriff Tom. "Lucy, you saved this town," he continued. "Not with a gun or with violence. You saved us with your heart, with your bravery, with your belief that we were worth saving." Everyone began to clap. Lucy's face turned red, but she smiled. Sheriff Tom put his arm around her shoulders, proud of this young girl who had become like a granddaughter to him. As night fell and stars began to appear in the sky, a bonfire was lit in the center of town. People sat around it, telling stories, singing songs, holding each other close. Children slept in their parents' arms. Old people smiled, remembering when they were young. Everyone felt safe. Everyone felt home. Marshal Kane sat beside Sheriff Tom and Lucy, watching the fire dance and glow. "What will you do now?" Marshal Kane asked the old sheriff. "Will you come back to being the official sheriff?" Sheriff Tom shook his head. "No," he said. "I'm too old for that now. But I will help Sheriff Cole. I will teach young people about justice and kindness. I will sit on Storm and watch over the town. And I will spend time with Lucy, who has taught me more about living than anyone has ever taught me." "And what about you, Lucy?" Marshal Kane asked. "What are your dreams?" "I want to be a teacher," Lucy said. "I want to teach children in this town about courage and community and how to be good people. I want to make sure that no child ever feels alone or afraid, the way some of us felt during the darkness. Marshall Kane smiled. He had seen many things in his life, violence and cruelty and the worst parts of human nature. But he had also seen redemption and growth and the best parts of humanity. Copper Creek was a place where both existed, and somehow, love had won. The fire crackled and danced. The stars twinkled above like diamonds. And in the small town in the middle of the desert, people had learned the most important lesson of all, that an ordinary person with an ordinary heart can do extraordinary things when they choose courage over fear, love over hate, and forgiveness over revenge. Copper Creek would never be the same, but it would be better. It would be stronger. It would be a place where people cared for each other, where second chances were given, and where an old horse and an old sheriff and a brave young girl had taught everyone the true meaning of what it means to be home. The end.